Gather round, dads, it's time for a tale. Hand me a book and a warm pint of ale. Let's discuss writing and the literary gods with Dan Roberts on the Dad Lit Pod.
Welcome to the Dadlit Pod, the literary podcast for people who want to find out who put Bella in the Wych Elm. Tonight I'm joined by Blake Myers of the Dark Veil Society, a group of like-minded independent horror writers who have gotten together to put together a terrific mutual aid society for advertising works of horror written by them. Blake is also the author of Who Put Bella in the Wych Elm, a horror novel based on a true story. Uh, kind of. Yeah.
Yes,
Yes, yeah,
absolutely.
based on a true story. And Blake is a dad, and he lives in the Czech Republic, which is great
Yes.
too, because I know a lot about what that's like. So, Blake, welcome to the Dadlet
Thank
Pod.
you. Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, so um, what is the Dark Veil Society? Because we've had SS Fitzgerald on, and he is a member of the Dark Veil Society.
Correct. Correct.
But I don't think we talked that much about it, and it's an interesting thing that you guys have set up. Would you mind telling us a little bit about the Dark Veil Society, what you guys do, um, maybe how you got involved?
Absolutely. I love pushing the Dark Veil Society. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
Uh, you actually described it really quite well. In essence, we're just a group of, like you said, like-minded horror authors or horror adjacent authors,
Right.
and we just come together to support each other in our writing. We beta read for each other, we arc read for each other. We just have fun discussions about the writing process in our Discord server. There's lots of non-writing socialization that goes on as well. So we just enjoy hanging out together. But then socially on social media, we promote each other. We're constantly there as a voice of support for one another, sharing each other's posts, liking each other's posts, commenting under posts, just to kind of help get that little extra boost, that we as indie authors really need. We don't, unfortunately, we're a small group. We don't like being exclusive, but if we grow too big, that's always a problem. So we are really just 19 people together as a group, and we do whatever we can to help each other, but we also try to help out other authors that are not even in the horror world. So we do a lot of reviews for people, arc reviews for other people, and we try to show support and love to the indie community, even outside of our little confines of a party, so to speak. So that's really it. That's the short and simple of it. We do like to run some contests together, and some other group activities. So we did a contest this summer for a book giveaway. We're going to do another one for Christmas for a book giveaway. We just did a writing contest for youth over Halloween. And then in the spring, we're going to try to put together a little fundraiser for promoting youth literacy.
Oh,
So
that's
that's
awesome.
that's it. That's us. That's the Dark Veil Society.
Yeah, it's a terrific thing, I think. Um, Certainly, I was introduced to it by S.S. Fitzgerald, who's a dad-led author and a previous interviewee, and he was talking about how it kind of it's great from an independent author's perspective to have a unifying group where you can trust that people are going to rate your books and rating books, believe it or not, and reviewing books is so essential to
Yes, it is.
success, and to selling anything because of the nature of algorithmic uh, algorithmic marketing from the
Terrible.
Amazons of the world. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. You're just really clawing and scratching for every single sale. And of course, there's so many different ways to market yourself as a
Yeah.
writer. And there's lots of different approaches. And so if someone out there is about they do this, what I'm going to talk about, no offense, I don't particularly like the idea of begging. That whole like,
Yeah.
oh, pity me, I have zero sales this month. Who wants to buy my book? It works. It works. I just don't like that approach to it. But I understand that approach because there are
Yeah.
so many times that I've been tempted to do it myself. Like, come on, people, please buy my book. Uh, it's just the reality of,
Yeah.
being an independent author in this huge world. I mean, we just are a little drop in the bucket.
Yeah. It's so competitive from the perspective of letting people know that your work is a work of quality, which Who Put Bella in the Witch Elm is a fine work of quality
Thank you.
that I really enjoyed. It's also an interesting work in that it tackles a true story, but from the perspective of uh, not. Well, I would say, why don't
Exactly.
you
Exactly.
tell everybody what Who Put Bella in the Witch Elm is about, and and what went into that book, and what that book's all about.
So there are really two sides to this book. There
Yeah.
is the true story, the historical aspect of her real murder. Then you have my story, and my story is the what if scenario.
Yeah.
So, for those of you who don't know of the mystery of Bella and the Witch Elm, I will share briefly about that. So, in 1943, you had a group of four boys who were foraging and poaching in the forest of Hagley Wood in UK, which is just outside of Birmingham. And as they were looking for rabbits and bird eggs, they came across a tree with a huge hollow in it. And one boy reached his hand in there and did not come out with an egg, but came out with a human skull. Of course, they were very frightened because they were afraid that they would be pegged for the murder. And these boys were like 14, 15 years old. So they
Yeah.
swore to secrecy. One of them obviously broke it and had to tell his parents because he was so worried about it. And so they did call the police. And the boys were exonerated. Nothing happened with them. They just became typical witnesses. But you then had this strange scenario of finding an entire skeleton of a woman inside a hollow of a tree, which is really hard to imagine
Hmm.
how big this hollow is. It's pretty big, and the hole is quite small, but she was crammed in there. And they really had nothing. This is the 40s. This is during the war. They had no real science to go off of. Like what we think of today as like fingerprints and DNA. It's just a skeleton.
Hmm.
So her murder went unsolved. About a year after they found her, this graffiti mysteriously appeared in town. And now, again, this is all true story. This is not even my book yet.
Yeah.
This graffiti appeared in town. Who put Bella in the witch elm? And of course, the police officers were like, okay, we have a name. Is this her real name? Is this just a name that somebody has given her to personify her more and bring more mercy and personal connection to hopefully solve the case? Was this a witness, a family member? Was it the killer himself feeling guilty? The police had no idea. And then this graffiti just has kept appearing over and over again throughout the last 80 years in this small town. And of course, unfortunately, her skeleton has been lost to history. So we can't do DNA testing on her or anything like that anymore. So
Hmm.
this is a dead case. It's going to go nowhere. And officially, it's been closed as of 2005. Now, this is where I come in. I was just flabbergasted by this idea of this graffiti all over town. Who put Bella in the Witch Elm? Why would people keep tagging this graffiti everywhere in this town, all over for the last 80 years? And I thought to myself, what if it's the ghost of Bella? She does not even remember who killed her and murdered her and put her in the witch elm. And therefore, she is driving the town mad, haunting the town in desperation to get vengeance, hoping that somebody can answer who put me in the witch elm. So that's where I go. And from there, the imagination just took off. So I have the book is riddled with real people, real places, real facts about their murder, real description of her body and everything. But then I throw in her ghost, which clearly is my imagination. So it's
Yes.
quite a mixture. It's really quite a mixture.
Yes. It's it's interesting from a sort of folklore perspective, right?
Yeah,
It's an interesting story, and it sort of lends itself to that emergent sort of the idea that there's an emergent supernatural element. So the actual case was closed in 2005, and they just
yeah,
decided that they couldn't determine who put Bella in the witch elm.
yeah, yeah. Pretty much.
Yeah,
So, um, the the police have done everything they can, and
yeah,
it's as simple as that. They have gone as far as um, organizing everything and doing all the research, but without bones, without any of her
yeah.
clothing or anything, there's just nothing that you can do about it.
hmm
So
It's interesting because it reminds me of the show Unsolved Mysteries with Robert
yes,
Stack. It feels like something that would simply be a rather legendary
yes,
unsolved mystery.
absolutely, absolutely.
Uh,
It belongs in that show without question.
yes,
It really
yes,
does.
no question. The Have you visited the Hagley Wood?
No, unfortunately not. I would have loved to if I had had the time and the money to do so.
Yep.
Okay, maybe the time to do so is a little pushing because it did take me 2.5 years to write it. So I probably could have gone. But financially, it's a little bit cost prohibitive for me. So I didn't get a chance to really go. So
So you're is this your first work of horror that you've written?
this is my first work that's been published. Yes.
Yep.
So horror is my preferred genre, and horror will be my focus for all my books. However, I love fantasy. I love straight thrillers and actions, and I love sci-fi. So I'm sure that there will be some offshoots as time goes on in different directions.
Some
But
alternatives.
horror will always be the go-to genre for me.
Yeah, what is it about horror that particularly inspires you, or alternatively meets with your autorial desires?
So when I was a child, I was terrified of everything, just beyond belief. I'm scared of my own ghosts, or my own shadows. Sorry, just all those things. Just like I jump out of my skin at the slightest sound of things. So I kind of created in my mind this idea of exposure therapy. Of if I just force myself to watch some scary movies, I'll learn to overcome my fears. So that's what I did. I forced myself to watch scary movies. Now, of course, I started out with things like Scooby Doo as a small child, because that's scary. And I remember being scared of Scooby Doo at one point. Um, so I just forced myself to watch these things and to read these things. And slowly over time, not only did I become acclimated to it, where I was like, okay, yeah, I'm not so scared of it. Then it was like, oh, but now I actually kind of like it. And I get that rush and that thrill behind it. So it really kind of just birthed out of that.
Yeah, what do you think are the key elements that make a good horror story for you?
For me, I like a lot of that mystery of what's about to happen. You know, when you
Hmm.
know that the thing, whatever it is right around the corner, and you know it's there. You can't quite see it. What is this? You know, so that mystery, that just sends chills up your spine. You know, because
Hmm.
you don't know what it is. You know, I hate the reveal of the monster in any movie and book because it's no longer scary anymore. So I love that mystery, that kind of hiding behind the veil, so to speak, of things. So I really enjoy that. But um, I would say on the negative side, I do avoid gore. I'm not a big gore person, and whether it's movies or books, I shy away from gore. Now, some of our authors at the Dark Veil Society love their gore, like Jan and Janelle. They love their gore, and there's nothing wrong with that. I love their books. Their books are great. I've read them and really enjoy them. But for me, I I like to focus on the feelings that you get from the unknown mystery, not from being subjected to a horror. It is a horror. It is horror of what is happening before me, and you know it's happening. I like that mystery. So the fade to black of someone's death, is quite good for me, when I watch a movie or read a book.
Yeah, what's the sort of trying to articulate it in my mind because I think there are a lot of ways that a person can write a horror book. A lot of interesting ways that a person can write a horror book. And uh, there's, as you described, there's gory horror. There's sort of the feeling of the uncanny. There's the cosmic horror of the incomprehensible, type of thing. And Who Put Bella in the Witch Elm definitely has the It Follows vision of horror. This idea that there's an almost an unstoppable force that is pressing down on you the entire book, which is it makes for thrilling reading and really interesting read.
Thank you for that comparison. I love
Yes,
It Follows. That's
yes,
fantastic.
yes.
I'm like, oh, there we go.
Well, I'm trying to think of contemporary books that I've read. I think Josh Ballerman's Incidents Around the House as well has that sort of it follows feel and is along sort of a similar vein to Who Put Bella in the Witch Elm, uh, to kind of capture the subgroup of horror, as it were,
Yeah,
because I've come to the conclusion that horror in writing and working on my own manuscripts and reading a lot of manuscripts, that horror seems to be this one area of writing right now which offers a wide breadth of experimentation and a wider breadth of it's not really autorial autorial indulgence, but it's not indulgence. It's the opportunity for the author to do something with flourishing language, to have more description. Because when you read like a thriller, for example, with the women in Cabin 10, or a lot of these straight thrillers, they really don't have. They're very plot, propulsion, uh, keep it moving, that sort of thing, where horror allows the author to just sort of like enjoy themselves and set the scene and play in that scene. And
Well,
if I found
yeah, sorry.
anything, yeah, yeah, you were gonna say,
Yeah. So I feel like there's two things going on there. One, it's really hard to actually scare people in a book.
yeah,
I can't remember the last time I actually got scared reading a book. Now a movie is different because you got the visual, you got the story, and you have the music. And of course, music is key,
yeah,
to any horror movie. So you got that combination, and then of course the jump scares, those things really work well to kind of scare you and creep you out. But a book is much different. It's harder to actually scare people. So I think in essence that has allowed a lot of writers to be like, okay, well, I'm not actually out to scare people. I'm out to have fun with this topic.
yeah,
Here's the topic. Let's have fun with it. If people get scared of it, great. That's a bonus. But, I don't actually write to try to scare people. I write to try to make a scene fun.
hmm
But I also think we have to give a big thank you to the 1980s horror movies where it was just everything was comedy.
yeah,
You just got horror comedy left and right. And even if it wasn't meant to be funny, it it ended up being comedy. And I think that when you look at other genres, you don't really have that freedom. You have to stick to your tropes, you have to stick to your reader and viewer expectations. And if you break from it too much, then they're going to get angry with you.
yeah,
So like you talk about romance, if you don't have that happy ever after ending to it, your reader's going to be disappointed. They want the happy ever after. And so I think that in horror, you had that freedom to break from all those genre expectations to do whatever you want with it, mix and match, genres together. A great example within Dark Veil Society right now, we have Tim McKee. I think it's Tim McKay. He's going to murder me now. Um, he just did his intro into horror with a horror fantasy. So
yeah,
here he's got fantasy's kind of his thing, and he's now added horror. And is it horror first, fantasy second, or is it fantasy first, horror second? I don't know, but that's for the reader to decide. But he really enjoyed that. Being able to say, okay, because I'm writing horror, I can do so much more. I can break from these chains, do what I want, and then the readers get to enjoy that, and
mhm.
and they don't have those expectations of I must have this.
So to get scared, what do you, I think, well, so I'd been thinking about this a lot because I've written a horror manuscript and then I'm working on I think I call it a sci-fi thriller horror, but it's not. The sci-fi element is so minuscule. It's simply a plot device to get us to the
Yeah,
horror, the
a
thriller element.
MacGuffin.
But yeah, yeah. To that extent, I think about what makes something scary and what books have I read where I've been scared. And there's an element of horror and of getting scared, which I think is really important, which is almost you gotta sort of give the book to someone who's not ready for it, right? And I've thought about this because I'm a dad, and I'm like, what are like formative, fun experiences that I had as a kid, and it's like, you know, going camping or being up at the family camp and watching a scary movie when you're like 8 and the movie is really scary and you obviously shouldn't be watching it and it's
Yeah,
gonna give you nightmares. But to that extent, I think that's so important, right?
yeah,
From like a growing up standpoint. So just beyond I think horror is best experienced at the, sort of corrupting times in your life. And that a lot of people who become horror fans have that experience of, oh yeah, I was watching Killer Clowns from Outer Space,
yeah,
because it was on TV and I wasn't supposed to be up, but I was 8 and it was on cable. And after that, I was terrified of every clown that I've ever seen. Or, I think what was the alligator is like a classic
Yeah.
schlocky, where the alligator keeps going into people's pools, and then they're out in the pool at night and they get eaten by the alligator. And it's like, it's completely absurd because it takes
Yes,
place in
absolutely.
like Los Angeles. But again, because you watch it when you're a kid, you're like, man, this is really scary. Like, I'm really scared of alligators.
Yeah.
And I think with books, particularly horror books, it's the same way, right? It almost has to be the same way. And, I'm in this debate with myself of like, how do you stretch it? Like, at what point do you, as a dad, because you're also a dad like me, um, I want my daughter to have fun with it, but like, if it's just going to be if she's going to be like on screen all the time, if, she's used to it, I feel like it's going to be a bummer. And so I have ideas, but what would be a way that you can think of to like introduce and be able to instill that sort of like sense of delightful terror where it like has a staying power, where like Freddy or Jason Voorhees has it for us. Do you think that's even possible today?
I don't know. That's a tough one because I think again, going back to these genre conventions and tropes, um, within within action, sci-fi, you have these certain expectations, and you know what's going to be there, and these are going to be exciting type moments. So a
Yeah.
gunfight's always going to be exciting.
Yeah.
A car chase is always going to be exciting. You don't have to necessarily like it, but it's exciting. So you have these very predictable things, and I think horror as well as comedy is so hard to predict what's going to be funny to someone, what's going to be scary to someone. You
Yeah.
got one joke, you can deliver it to a crowd of people, and they're going to just laugh, just like crazy, like, oh, that's the greatest
Yeah.
joke I've ever heard. You can have the exact same delivery at another comedy set, and the people are like, they didn't find it funny at all. And I think the same thing is true with horror, is that you don't know what your readers are actually going to be scared of.
Yeah.
What people actually find frightening. And of course, this is why gore exists and why I don't particularly find it scary, is that some people, they're terrified of the sight of blood. They're terrified of the if that was me, the pain that I'd be going through, and oh my gosh, that to them is scary. And so I think it's not so much about trying to figure out what the readers find scary. I think a lot of it just has to be, you write what you find is scary. Of course, they say that, write what you know.
Hmm.
And I think that really does apply here. And in horror, you just have to write what you think is scary, what you find in your imagination to be that kind of tingling feels up your spine, the goosebumps, and use that for your inspiration. So, of course, when I wrote Who Put Bella in the Witch Elm, those are the type of things I incorporated in. The things that I would be like, oh my gosh, if I was in that scene right there, like my pants would be full of something. I would not be a happy camper in that scenario. So I would say the whole book was just me thinking about what I find scary. And of course, I took inspiration from the movies and other books, like Woman in Black. Both the movie and the book I love. And so there's a hint of her, the Woman in Black and Bella. And the same is true even for Samara from The Ring. There's a hint of her as well, and Who Put Bella in the Witch Elm, because I find those things very frightening and very scary. And so I took that and used my own fears, to put into the book. And I think that's really what's going to make any author good. Now, maybe you got some people like Stephen King who, they've been writing for so long and they've written so many books. At some point, they have to go beyond their own personal fears because they've already written so many books about it that they have to do something unconventional for themselves and do clowns or do something that's more of a thriller based type thing or something like that, or a car that's alive. Um,
Which I've never read, by the way. I've
so
never
yeah,
read
I've never read
Christine.
Christine either. Yeah, I've seen it,
Yes.
but I've never
Uh,
read it.
I think about things that are unnerving, and a car that's alive, it sort of doesn't strike me as unnerving. I mean, Cujo, there's
Yeah,
certain elemental things that he's done, like Cujo, for example.
yeah,
Uh, I'm trying to think of the last book that I really read of his that had me really had me scared. And I think it was probably The Shining. But The Shining's
yeah.
is
That or Pet Cemetery.
yeah, The Shining's the scariest book ever written, as far as I'm concerned. There's never been a scarier book than The Shining.
Yeah,
It has, uh, and I've tried to sort of understand what about The Shining is so scary. And I think it's just this feeling that he creates that something is going to go wrong, right? That that you have the isolation, you have
yeah,
the mystical elements, and then you just have Jack Torrance as he wrote him as sort of um, this person who's just almost built for disaster.
yeah. No, I agree. Of course, I think Kubrick, or I know King hates it, but
Yeah.
Kubrick's version of The Shining is one of my all-time favorite movies.
Oh, it's
But
so
no, I think
scary.
I think the isolation, you're 100% accurate on that, because the book doesn't really take off until they can no longer visit town. They're at the
Yeah,
beginning. They're like,
yeah,
they're not snowbound yet, and so they can kind of visit town. They go to the doctor, and he goes in, whatever. He's tempted to go to the bar and that type of stuff. But
yeah,
you know that is just all build up to it. But once they get snowbound and
yeah,
they cannot get out,
yeah,
now you've set that stage. And of course, you're in this huge, massive open space. And I also think there's that vulnerability. People have that fear of open water and of the
yeah,
deep, and I actually feel like the Overlook Hotel has that same feel to it. It's so huge and massive,
yeah.
and you get swallowed into its massiveness, and yet you are trapped there. You
Hmm.
know, so I think there's all those elements that get played into it, and I love that idea of isolation. And I actually think that was a challenge for me when I wrote Who Put Bell in the Witch Elm, because I wanted that isolation, but I couldn't find a great way to put it physically into the book. There's a
Yeah,
few places where the main character, Emma, is temporarily isolated when she's in the tunnels. For example, and a couple times when she's in the forest, she's isolated. But uh, I had to change it up. I was like, well, I can't play that card because the story doesn't match it. And so sometimes you have these great elements that will work, but you can't force it into the story either.
hmm,
You have to let the story unfold in its way where these natural elements come out. So I did try to isolate her psychologically, which I hope I was able to pull off. I believe that I did. That's up to the readers to decide if they agree with me.
hmm.
But physically, she was not as isolated as the Torrance family.
Yeah. The I think when you're outside, because I've been experimenting with this with the book I'm writing, which is set in a high school.
You froze on me.
Oh, sorry. The I'm I've been experimenting with this question of like of what's scary without isolation, because I've set a book in a high school, and I think to me I've found it's giving the reader a sense that something could go wrong, right? That you establish the character, you make the character um, likable, or at least establish some measure of identity with the character. And then you place them in a situation where something just could go wrong. And you either let it go wrong or you don't.
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
the result of I almost think of it as like it's like a roller coaster, right? The
Yeah.
best roller coasters are when you go over that last hump and your butt comes out of the seat and it's like something could go wrong. It doesn't,
Yeah.
because that's the nature of the thing, but at the same time, your own body is now prepared for that, and you deal with the discomfort of it. And right, this is also where humor comes from, right? That
Yeah.
when we laugh, what we're experiencing is the thrill of the discomfort and our mind recognizing that that discomfort isn't what we think it is. It's not as threatening,
Yeah.
and the point of it is, probably from an evolutionary standpoint, was so that we could exist in complex groups, right?
Yeah.
And I think to some extent, playing with that element of it and getting us scared and just creating that sense of imminent threat that something could go wrong touches on that inner sense. This sort of idea, like horror is that 5 seconds where you can't locate your kid on the playground, and joy is when you do, is the
Yeah.
end of that, when you do. Uh,
That anticipation, you know, you
yeah,
you know it's coming. You know that it's about to hit the fan. You know, the
yes,
stage has been set, you know it's about to hit the fan. And it's like those little jack in the boxes. You know, you're turning that wheel as a kid, and you're just waiting, and you're slowing down in the crank handle a little bit. When is that
yes,
clown going to come out of that box? And you just start going a little bit slower and a little bit slower because you know it's coming.
yeah,
You know it's coming, but it's that you don't know when it's coming, and that
yes,
surprise effect that really has that. So I know I agree with you on that. That
yeah.
setting
Which,
the stage really does help with the fear.
yeah, at the same time, you think about the Jack in the Box metaphor. Uh, it you almost think you have to ask yourself, like, what's scarier, that it comes out of the box, that it never opens,
Oh yeah,
or
there you
that
go.
it or that it you know this is the thing, this is the fun thing that you can do with horror, or that it opens and there's nothing there.
Yeah,
And I think that there's so much to be done with that, but it just requires so much experimentation, and it's definitely interesting. I think it's, of all the different genres that I've sat down to try and write, horror is sort of the one that requires the most experimentation, um, and the, and sort of a cogence to write it. The hardest thing to write is humor.
yeah,
Writing humor and writing funny is so astonishingly hard and requires so much work, I think. I think horror actually is more experimentally challenging. But I think the hardest thing to write is humor. Like, writing a
yeah,
funny book is so hard.
yeah. Yes, absolutely,
Uh,
absolutely.
people that have succeeded in writing funny books, my hat is off to you,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
That
How do
shit
you
is
do
not
it?
easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, how do
Yeah.
you do it?
Yeah.
So let's
Now
talk
I
about,
do.
well, what were you
So
going to
I,
say?
I was going to come back to the idea of, you're talking about the high school
Yeah.
and this idea of how do you create isolation, high school. So you're talking about the anticipation and setting the stage for things. But, I think, one of the things going back to It Follows is she's not physically isolated. She has her friends with
Yeah.
her the
Yeah.
entire time, but she has that emotional isolation
Yeah.
where she's around everybody.
Yeah.
She's around everybody in this public space, but she's the only one that sees it,
Yeah.
and it is coming after her. And of course, there's that scene in the beach when it finally grabs her hair, and then everyone sees now the effect. They
Yeah.
don't see it, but they see the effect of what's going on, and they finally believe her. So you had that isolation where not only is she the only one that can see it, but nobody believes her because no one
Yeah.
else sees it. And of course, that's a really common trope in horror of no one around you believes it's actually happening. Oh, it's all in your head. Oh, you just had a little bit of something in your stomach,
Hmm.
as Ebenezer Scrooge had said. And so um that can be very isolating and very frightening to people. So you do have to mix and match and combine all those different elements in a fun, unique way, like I said, in
Yeah.
an experimental way to really pull off any given story.
Yeah. To make it happen. So you are in the Czech Republic. You live and
Yes,
work in the Czech Republic, or
correct.
Česká Republika for those of us
That's
in the
right.
know. For those of us in the know. How'd you end up there?
Well, man, so that's a long story. I will
Well,
give you the
give me the
short
short
version.
version.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can talk about it.
So I actually did a lot of sport when I was younger, and I was in a organization that did camps in the summer. And there was a group of athletes here, it's back in the 90s,
Hmm.
that wanted to have some sports people come over and teach some camps for them, some things that this is before YouTube, before all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so getting a hold of things, internet was just a baby back then. So getting a hold of things and learning by yourself was a whole lot harder back then. You needed to have instructors. So they actually contacted my organization just by random chance. And so we started to send over a group of people in 99 to come over here for just 1 or 2 weeks into these sport camps. And I made my first trip over here in 2002 and just fell in love with the place right away. And then
Hmm.
I just kept coming back. Every couple of years I would come back and do another 2 weeks, at these camps, and really started to develop some friendships with everybody and fall in love with the food, fall in love with the culture, the beer, obviously the
Hmm.
beer. And at
Crucifix
that,
Acerna is my
yeah,
favorite.
okay,
The
okay,
the
it's a good
the
choice. Yeah.
the dark Crucifixer.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
I'm a big Siani fan. I don't know if you had Siani
Uh,
when you were here or not.
I
Yeah,
did not. I did not. I
yeah.
had Chesky Budvar,
Oh yeah,
Pilsner Urquell, obviously,
yeah,
which is everywhere. But I was a big Crucifixer fan.
yeah.
That's my absolute favorite.
It's a good choice. So yeah, so I fell in love with all that, and eventually they said, "Hey, would you like to come for a whole year? Just come
Hmm.
for a whole year, and you'll just be like a subcontracted coach, and you'll travel around to different teams weekly and work with the coaches and the teams." I was young, I was single, I was in my early 30s at that point, and I had no family, so I was like, "Yeah, why not?" So I took a year sabbatical for my school. I was a teacher in the U.S. and came over here to do this 1 year stint sabbatical of coaching, basically full time, so to speak. And I kind of did it in a missionary standpoint. I am a fairly religious individual, I have to say.
Hmm.
It is what I went to school for, religion and philosophy. And so I kind of took it as a missions trip, so to speak. And I didn't want to leave at the end of the year. And of course, I also have to say that my now wife probably had some very strong influence in that because my wife is Czech. And so we started to date during that year. And I was like, well, I just can't go back, being in the middle of this relationship that I really quite enjoy. So
Hmm.
I said, screw it, I'm going to stay. And so I stayed, and here I am now, 14
Years
years
later.
later. Yeah, 14
Uh,
years later, and I'm still here.
yes. What's it like? Because I lived there for 3 months, and did an internship at Pamatnik Lidice.
Yeah, okay.
And so I was doing that when I was getting my master's degree because I got a master's degree in Holocaust and Genocide Studies and History.
Okay. Yeah.
When I went over, I did that sort of sadder time in Czech history. But of course, I learned a lot about the Czech Republic and wrote my undergraduate thesis is about the Czech Republic. Or, well, it's
Okay.
about Czechoslovakia, but
Yeah.
uh, yeah, because it was, of course, Czechoslovakia back then.
Yeah. Until
So,
93.
until 93, the Velvet Divorce. And my favorite story, which was they agreed with the Slovakians that no one would retain the flag of Czechoslovakia. And then when the Slovakians complained that the Czech Republic retained it, the Czech said, the country that made that decision doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
It's one of my favorite
It
favorite
was
stories.
fairly amicable. There was a fairly
Yes.
friendly divorce, but there were a few, the post breakup argument you
Yeah.
always inevitably have in any relationship.
Always, always. So yeah, and I really like it there. I think it's lovely.
Wonderful place.
Aside from being a beautiful place because even Prague is delightful and baroque as are all, cities in that part of the world. But out in the countryside, it's very pretty. It's very sort of settled. And if you like, farms, if you like that kind of experience, there are just lovely little towns set up around that circular city center with the church and the old, vineyards,
The
vintners,
town
and
square,
the
and
town
yeah,
squares. I mean, if you want to go and just visit beautiful little towns, it's such a nice place for that,
it
and
is.
so
It
great.
is. It is. It's a very romantic place, and I don't mean romantic in the
Yes.
sense of romance between relationships, but it's just a great place. I mean, it's very inspiring. You do travel to these little villages, and they're just a dime a dozen, but each one still has its own unique feel to it. And
Yep.
there's quite a bit of inspiration I've taken around here, just little places here and there. Let's go. That's kind of a creepy place, and that it's old, like
Yeah.
that's older than my entire country. Thank you very much.
Yes.
This little village is older than my entire country. This little hotel I'm staying in is older than my entire country. So, yeah, there is just these wonderful little nook and cranny places throughout the country, and of course, for those of you who don't know, there are more castles per square kilometer in the Czech Republic than in any other country in Europe.
I did not know that.
Yes. So you just got all these just unique, wonderful castles of all shapes and styles, from ruins to,
Hmm.
completely livable, or museums and everything. So it's great. Sorry, my rabbit decided to chew on the Ethernet cable. I was like, no, don't chew on the Ethernet cable. Okay, hold on. Okay, he got distracted. Sorry about
Yes.
that.
Well, Blake, why don't you plug who put Bella in the Witch Elm, and we'll close out.
Okay. Well, Who Put Bell in the Witch Elm is perfect for people who love a great mystery, but they also like to have that little bit of paranormal scare with it. It really plays upon that what if scenario, taking a real life scenario and what if this?
Mm.
What if a ghost was there driving you mad and driving the town mad and would not let go until you can find out who put her in the witch elm? It's a great story that I absolutely fell in love with. The true mystery. And my hope and desire is that not only are people creeped out, a little bit scared by it and interested by it, but I also hope that people get fascinated by the actual murder and the actual story behind her, because it is really quite fascinating, even outside of my imagination. It's just a great little mystery to read about. So I hope it inspires people to do their own homework and find out more about who Bella is or was.
Well, thank you, Blake. I enjoyed the book. I suggest people
Thank
go
you.
and check it out. It's a terrific mystery. It's got chills, horror, and a very, very fun story. And obviously, you should also all check out the Dark Veil Society and the work being done by indie horror authors over there, because it's very cool and it's a very great thing. Well, thank you, Blake, once again.
Thank
This is
you.
Blake Myers, folks.
Appreciate it. It's great to be here.
Thank you for coming on. This has been the Dadlet Pod.
Our time together has come to an end. It's time to return to your wife, kids, and friends. It's time to pick up those books you forgot while you wait for the next Dadlit